Shenzhou 21, 2F-Y21. The China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, CASC, successfully launched on a southern trajectory a Chinese orbital carrier rocket Long March 2FG, LM-2FG, also known as the Chang Zheng 2FG, CZ-2FG, with the 2F-Y21 mission from Launch Pad SLS-1921, LC-4391, at Launch Area 4, LA-4, also known as the South Launch Site, SLS, and LC-43, at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, JSLC. This launch flew Shenzhou 21 spacecraft, mass roughly 8,100 kilograms at launch, whose design is closely based on Russia's Soyuz, to the Tiangong space station. The flight took place on Friday, October 31, 2025, at 15 hours and 44 minutes Coordinated Universal Time, UTC, or at 23 hours and 44 minutes China Standard Time, CST. Shenzhou 21. Shenzhou 21, Pinyin, Shenzhou Ershiaihao, literal translation, Divine Boat Number 21, is a Chinese spaceflight to the Tiangong space station, Pinyin, Tiangong, literal translation, Heavenly Palace, launched on October 31, 2025. It carried 3 takonauts on board a Shenzhou spacecraft. The mission was the 16th crewed Chinese spaceflight and the 21st flight overall of the Shenzhou program. Shenzhou 21 launched on October 31, 2025, prior to the end of the previous mission, Shenzhou 20. It was the 10th flight to the Tiangong space station, Pinyin, Tiangong Kongjianzhan, and is expected to last approximately 6 months. It will depart following the arrival of the Shenzhou 22 crew in 2026. The mission launched from Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, JSLC, Pinyin, Jiuquan Weixing Fash Zhongxin, also known as Shuangchengzi Missile Test Center, Launch Complex B2, formerly Northwest Comprehensive Missile Testing Facility, Base 20, 63,600 unit, on board a Long March 2F, LM-2F, CZ-2F, rocket. The Shenzhou spacecraft will dock with the forward docking port on the Tianhe, Pinyin, Tianhe, literal translation, Harmony of the Heavens, core module of the station, where the crew will enter and take over operations from the departing crew of Shenzhou 20. The crew for the Shenzhou 21 mission was selected in February 2025. Commander, Zhang Lu. Flight Engineer, Wu Fei. Payload Specialist, Zhang Hongzhang.
Long March 2F, LM2F, CZ2F. The Long March 2F, LM2F, also known as the Chang Zheng 2F, CZ2F, is a Chinese orbital carrier rocket, part of the Long March 2nd rocket family. Designed to launch crewed Shenzhou, Divine Arrow, spacecraft, the Long March 2F is a human-rated 2-stage version of the Long March 2E rocket, which in turn was based on the Long March 2C launch vehicle. It is launched from Complex South Launch Site, SLS, at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, JSLC. The Long March 2F made its maiden flight on November 19, 1999, with the Shenzhou 1 spacecraft. After the flight of Shenzhou 3, Chinese Communist Party, CPC, General Secretary and President Jiang Zemin named the rocket Shenzhou, meaning Divine Arrow. On December 29, 2002, a Long March 2F launched Shenzhou 4 for a final uncrewed test of the Shenzhou spacecraft for the upcoming flight of the first crewed mission. Until then, all missions were uncrewed. On October 15, 2003, a Long March 2F launched Shenzhou 5, China's maiden crewed mission, and achieved its first human space flight. Since then, the rocket has launched 20 more missions into orbit, with the latest being the Shenzhou 20 spacecraft. Externally, the rocket is similar to the Long March 2E from which it was derived. Most of the changes involve the addition of redundant systems to improve safety, although there are some structural modifications that allow the rocket to support the heavier fairing required by the Shenzhou capsule. The rocket is also capable of lifting heavier payloads with the addition of extra boosters to the first stage. The rocket also has an advanced fault monitoring and diagnosis system to help the astronauts escape in time of emergency, in other words, a launch escape system, and is the first Chinese-made rocket to be assembled and rolled out to its launch site vertically. A derivative called Long March 2F, G, LM2F, G, CZ2F, G, first launched in 2011, was made to replace the existing 2F variant. For uncrewed launches, Long March 2F, T, LM2F, T, CZ2F, T, was designed, which launched space laboratories such as Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2. It dispenses with the launch escape system and supports a larger fairing to accommodate the bulkier payloads. For launching payloads like reusable experimental spacecraft, the Long March 2F, G's fairing has bumps added to enclose parts of the payload, such as wingtips, without using a larger fairing. Launch Area 4, LA4. Launch Area 4, LA4, also known as the South Launch Site or SLS, and LC-43, is the only active Long March launch complex at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, JSLC. It consists of two launch pads, SLS-1, 921, LC-43, 91, and SLS-2, 603, LC-43, 94. SLS-1 has been the launch site for all missions conducted as part of the Shenzhou program, including the first Chinese crewed spaceflight, Shenzhou 5. Since it was activated in 1999, Long March 2C, Long March 2D, Long March 2F, Long March 4C and Long March 11th rockets have launched from LA4. The first spacecraft to be launched from the site was Shenzhou 1, atop a Long March 2F, on November 19, 1999. SLS-2 became operational in 2003, and has since been used for most uncrewed launches from Jiuquan. As of March 2010, 20 launches have been made from the complex. The most recent launch from the site was from SLS-2 on March 5, 2010, when the Long March 4C made its first flight from the complex, carrying the Jiuquan 9 satellite. Long March 4 launches had previously only been conducted from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, JSLC. China Manned Space Agency, CMSA. China Manned Space Agency, CMSA, is a government agency of China responsible for the administration of China Manned Space Program, CMS, the Chinese Human Space Flight Program. The agency is under the Equipment Development Department of the Central Military Commission. China Manned Space Agency represents the Chinese government to take management responsibilities for the China Manned Space Program. CMSA's functions including development strategy, planning, overall technology, research and production, infrastructure construction, flight missions organization and implementation, utilization and promotion, international cooperation and news release, etc. CMSA consists of the following divisions: Integrated Planning and Management Division, Scientific Program and Quality Control Division, Utilization and Development Division, Infrastructure Construction Division, System Division. China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, CASC. The China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, CASC, is a main contractor for the Chinese space program. It is state-owned and has subsidiaries which design, develop and manufacture a range of spacecraft, launch vehicles, and ground equipment. It also has a division for strategic and tactical missile systems. CASC was officially established in July 1999 as part of a Chinese government reform drive, having previously been one part of the former China Aerospace Corporation. Various incarnations of the program date back to 1956.